Have you ever wondered why the things women long for the most are often the ones they never say out loud? It's not because they don't know how to express them. It's not because they want to test you. It's because women don't love with words, they love with signals. A glance, a light-hearted joke, a fleeting touch, seemingly random yet carrying an entire world of emotion behind it. The problem is, most men were never taught how to read those signals. And in the end, love doesn't fall apart because someone was wrong. It falls apart because no one saw the other. This video isn't a checklist of what to do. It's a map, guiding you back to the small things, where women say, "I love you," without needing to speak. Part 1. They won't say it, but they always hope you notice. There's a truth you won't find in any psychology textbook, but if you've ever loved a woman deeply, you'll understand. Women don't demand, they hope. And what they hope for often isn't said aloud. You can't expect them to sit down, pull up a 10-slide PowerPoint and say, "What I need is a morning hug, a text in the afternoon, and someone to stroke my hair when I'm quiet." No. Instead, you'll see small signals, so small that if your face is buried in your phone, you'll miss them. And later you'll wonder why she's drifting away, even though you think you did nothing wrong. Nonverbal signals. The test you'll never be warned about. She won't say, "I wish you'd notice my eyes today." But if you do and say, "You look tired, but your eyes are still beautiful," she'll remember it for a long time. She won't say, "I feel empty and I need someone to hold my hand." But if you place your hand on her shoulder and give a gentle squeeze, she'll feel safer than with any comforting words. Rick's story, from Austin, Texas. I have a friend named Rick, an office worker in Austin. One day he told me his girlfriend had been oddly irritable, often upset for no reason. I asked, "Have you done anything lately that makes her feel loved?" Rick replied, "What do you mean? I didn't do anything wrong. I still take her out, still text her." I said, "That's the problem. You didn't do anything wrong, but you also didn't do anything thoughtful." One evening, Rick noticed she was watching TV with a blank expression. He tried gently massaging her shoulders, just that. She turned around and looked at him like he had just won the lottery. "I've never seen a more grateful or more tender pair of eyes," he said. Since then, Rick started paying attention. He stopped waiting for her to say things out loud and began observing, listening, and acting. He told me, "The relationship feels lighter now. Weirdly, she's happier, and I feel more alive too." The lesson: love is a kind of music without lyrics. Men are often programmed to react. When there's a problem, fix it. When someone asks, answer. When someone needs, act. But women live in a more delicate emotional world. They don't need you to solve things. They need you to empathize, to see them, and to respond without being asked. That's an art, and perhaps the hardest exam in love. So what can you do? 1. Observe more than you listen. If she's quieter than usual, maybe she's sad, but doesn't want to explain. Don't jump to, "What's wrong?" Just offer her a cup of tea. Sometimes silent warmth beside someone speaks louder than words. 2. Touch gently, in the right place, at the right time. A light hand on her back, a brush of her hair, a touch on her wrist. These small things may be all she needs to feel loved. 3. Show initiative. Don't wait for her to ask. If you already know what makes her happy, just do it. Repeat what worked before. Better to be gently familiar than impressively irrelevant. The truth is, women are very much like men, just quieter about it. We all want to be seen, to be loved in a way that doesn't have to be spelled out. And that's why, if you learn to understand the silent language of women, you're not just a good boyfriend. You become a rare man, because being able to read what she doesn't say is the highest form of love. Part 2. A hug can save an entire exhausting week. There is a kind of power that makes no sound, needs no explanation, and doesn't require any green light or permission. It is a timely hug. You could spend an entire year building a house with roof tiles, brick walls, and storm-proof windows. But sometimes a woman just needs an embrace, strong and gentle, to feel safe in the middle of her own emotional storm. Julia's story in New Jersey. Julia is an emergency room doctor at a major hospital in New Jersey. She met her husband, Mark, when he was the head nurse of the cardiology department. A couple in the field, you'd think they'd be rational and understanding. But no. Julia once told me a story that seemed small but stayed with me. That day I came home after a 12-hour shift. 3 deaths, 1 severe complication, my head buzzing. I didn't say anything. Not even hello. I just dropped my bag on the chair and sat down in silence. Mark didn't ask anything. He didn't analyze. He didn't offer solutions. He just walked over and hugged me from behind. Not too tight, not too light, just enough for me to burst into tears. Julia said, "I didn't cry because I was weak. I cried because someone finally saw me, without me having to explain anything." When a woman doesn't need to hear, but needs to feel, a bad day for a woman is not the same as for a man. When men are stressed, they go silent, hit the gym, or play games to escape. When women are stressed, they still have to care for the kids, cook, work, smile, and still look good. They're tired, but they keep going. And because they're so used to no one asking, "Are you okay?" they don't say a word. A hug at the right moment says it all. It says, "I'm here. I don't need the details, but I see that you need me." You don't need to explain anything. Men. Learn to use your body to love again. Men are used to using their bodies to work, to show strength, or for sports. But sometimes using your body to love doesn't require a bedroom. All it takes is a hug from behind when she's washing the dishes, resting your head on her shoulder when sitting together on the couch, holding her hand in the kitchen for no reason at all. It doesn't need to be a special occasion, because to a woman, any day she's still being hugged is a day she still feels loved. Not a solution, but a presence. This is a classic mistake many men make. When a woman says, "I feel tired," they immediately suggest, "You should get some rest." "Should I buy you some medicine? Let me call a doctor for you." Not wrong, but not needed. She doesn't need a fix. She needs a companion. You're not a doctor. You're a husband, a lover, a partner. And sometimes your presence, even in silence, is the most powerful form of healing. Emotional reflex. A skill every man can learn. You might not be naturally sensitive, but emotional reflex is a skill you can train. Next time you notice she's unusually quiet, instead of asking, "What's wrong?" just do one simple thing. Reach out and pull her into a hug. And say, "I don't know what's on your mind, but I'm here." That's it. No need for long words, no need to be exact. She'll understand, and her heart will calm down. Hugs aren't always romantic, but they're always real. Not every hug is like in the movies. Golden lighting, soft music, teary eyes. Some hugs smell like fried onions, involve unwashed clothes, happen after a fight with her still upset. But those are the hugs that are real, because you don't hug when everything is okay. You hug to get through when things are not okay. Conclusion. A hug is a woman's emotional map. Women remember clearly who hugged them when they were at their weakest. And you don't have to be perfect. You just need to know. When she needs a place to lean on, I don't ask why. I just hug her. You don't need your mind to love. You need your heart through a hug. Part 3. A hand on her back. A promise that needs no words. There are gestures that don't need to be taught in school, don't need to be in any dating guidebook, and don't need accompanying dialogue. Just one hand gently placed on her back can change someone's entire mood. It sounds simple, but here's the truth. When a woman allows you to touch her back naturally, it's a privilege, a sign of trust, an invitation into the quiet emotional space within her. The back, a place unseen, yet always in need of protection. The back is the part of the body a person cannot see. It's also the most vulnerable to attack. In biology and survival instinct, letting someone stand behind you signals extremely high trust. When you place your hand on a woman's back, at the right time, in the right way, you're not just touching skin. You're using your body to say, "I'm here to protect you." No fuss, no performance, just simple and as effective as a shield for the soul. A story from Seattle's flea market. I was once in Seattle on a chilly afternoon at Pike Place Market. There was a middle-aged couple walking around. The woman looked a bit tense, maybe because of the crowd or the noise. When people started pushing through a narrow turn, the man didn't say anything. He simply reached out and placed his hand gently on his wife's back. He didn't push, didn't pull, just touched. She immediately let out a deep breath. Her face softened, her steps slowed down. Just one touch, but it was like an emotional password that switched her nervous system into safe mode. I watched that scene and thought, that's what mature men do. They don't control, they guide through presence. Oxytocin, the hormone of trust. It's no coincidence that gestures like stroking hair, a soft touch on the shoulder, or placing a hand on the back feel so comforting. When your skin senses gentle contact, your body releases oxytocin, a hormone linked to bonding, trust, and a sense of peace. Women are especially sensitive to oxytocin. That's why a hand placed just right can feel safer than 10 promises. A light touch can dissolve the emotional armor they've unconsciously built. And sometimes closeness doesn't come from a love confession, but from silent presence. It's not touching for fun. It's touching with meaning. Men are often misunderstood as thinking, touch leads to more. No, sometimes touch is simply to be close, and women are perceptive enough to tell the difference between someone who touches out of desire, someone who touches out of politeness, and someone who touches because they genuinely care about how she feels. That gesture cannot be faked. You must be mature enough to place your hand on a woman's back without making her feel scared or guarded. Only real tenderness and real care can do that. Simple practices with powerful impact. You don't need to learn meditation or read dozens of self-help books to know how to make a woman feel safe. You just need to practice these simple gestures. 1. When crossing the street. Gently place your hand on her back, not to control her, but to let her know you're covering the rear. 2. When she's walking up the stairs, a light touch on her shoulder or back, not to guide, but to support. 3. When you're standing in a crowd or unfamiliar environment, a soft touch that says, "Don't worry, I'm here." When protection isn't charging ahead, but quietly standing behind. Women don't need a man who's always charging in like an action hero. They need someone who quietly pays attention and silently shows up at the right time. Placing your hand on her back doesn't diminish your masculinity. On the contrary, it shows you're confident enough not to assert it with words. Conclusion. A small gesture, a big meaning. You don't need to be a psychologist. You don't need to master the 5 love languages. You just need to know. When she's tired, anxious, or needs to feel protected, don't ask. Just place your hand on her back. Because true love doesn't need to be said too much. It just needs to be felt at the right moment. Part 4. When a woman shares her dream, don't just listen, feel it. When a woman starts talking about her dreams, it's not an invitation for you to become an investor. It's a test of the heart, not to check whether you have enough money, houses, or resources to make it happen, but to see if you have a place in that dream. Dreams aren't to convince. but to open a door. You may have heard her say something like, "I've always wanted to have a little bakery by the sea." Or, "I often imagine a wooden house in the suburbs with a garden, books and soft music." And if you respond with, "Yeah, sounds fine," then, sorry, you just slammed the door to her inner world shut. Amanda's story in Chicago. Amanda is a painter living in Chicago. On the 5th date with her ex, a guy working in banking, she shared that she wanted to leave the city, move to the suburbs, open a studio, and live close to nature. He burst out laughing. "Sounds like a Hallmark movie." And just like that, the date ended. Not at that exact moment, but the trust cracked. A few years later, Amanda met Jay, a quiet software engineer, not into art, and never once thought of rural life. But when she told him the same old dream, Jay simply asked, "If you teach me to paint, I'll try." Amanda said, "In that moment, I knew. He didn't need to understand everything. He just needed to want to walk with me in the dream." Now they live by a lake. There's an easel, a little vegetable garden, and 4 cats. When a woman shares a dream, she's sharing a part of herself. Not every dream is practical. Not every idea can be done right away. But the important thing isn't the content. What matters is whether you can see the real emotions behind what she's saying. If she says, "I've always wanted to learn pottery," she's saying, "I want to return to peace." If she talks about raising a puppy, she's saying, "I want to care for someone and not be alone." If she talks about quitting her job to travel, she may be suffocating and just wants to truly live, even just once. Listen with your heart, not just your ears. The smartest response isn't "okay." It's, "Is there any way I can help?" You don't have to make all her dreams come true immediately. But you should respond as a companion, not a critic. Many men make this mistake. Either dismiss it outright, "That's not realistic," or ignore it altogether. "Sounds nice," then change the topic. Or jump into advisor mode. "You should do this or that." All 3 are wrong. The right way is, sit still, listen, and ask, what makes you want that? What part of that dream brings you joy? I may not fully understand, but if you need me, I'm here. You don't need to share the dream, but you must respect it. You're not her replica. You might not understand why a pottery studio or a seaside bakery could bring someone to tears. But if you're sensitive enough to notice the sparkle in her eyes as she speaks, you'll understand. This is the truest part of her. And if you want to win a woman's heart, don't ignore that part. Conclusion. Her dream is a mirror into her soul. Women don't share their dreams with just anyone, only with those they feel safe with. And if you're the one she trusts enough to share them with, don't waste it. Because maybe she doesn't need you to fulfill the dream. She just needs to know that if she ever begins to chase it, you won't walk away. Part 5. Jokes aren't always innocent. When she tests your reactions through humor. Men often think that when women talk about love, intimacy, or sensitive topics, it's because they're open, fun, or just like to joke. But reality is more complex. It could be a test, subtle, clever, and completely unannounced. When a woman starts telling you a joke about sex, or slips in a few suggestive words in everyday stories, you're not just watching stand-up comedy. You're stepping into an emotional test, disguised as entertainment. She's testing your reaction without saying so. Why? Because most women don't want to seem too forward or too easy, especially when the relationship is still unclear. Instead of saying directly, "I want to get closer to you," they choose a softer approach. I read this article that said vanilla scent drives men absolutely crazy. Then they watch your reaction. If you awkwardly chuckle and change the subject, you just lost points for subtlety. If you overjoke, you just crossed a line. If you smile, understand, and respond gently, she'll feel reassured that you're mature enough to step into deeper emotional territory. The story of Caleb in Los Angeles. Caleb is a photographer living in LA, a bit cold in personality, but extremely observant. He shared that during his early dates with his current girlfriend, a witty designer, she often accidentally brought up intimate topics in a joking way. Once they passed a candle shop and she said, "Vanilla midnight fantasy candles, one whiff, and I just want to hug someone." Caleb simply smiled and said, "Careful with that. Some people are more easily seduced by scent than by words." Then he gave her a look, half teasing, half real. She blushed, but she didn't change the subject. Caleb said, "That's when I knew. She wasn't just testing my reaction. She was allowing me to step in a little closer. Don't see her humor as a shield. It's a way in." Smart women often use humor to gauge a man's sensitivity. They won't say, "Are you mature enough to understand my unspoken desires?" Instead, they tell a joke and quietly observe how you react. Because humor is where emotions are wrapped in softness, and those who can read through that layer are the ones they trust. The golden way to react to her sensitive jokes. You don't need to be a smooth talker to respond well. You just need to do 3 things. 1. Keep eye contact. Look at her as she speaks. Don't look away, but don't stare too intensely either. Just be present. 2. Smile, but don't smirk. Let her see you get the hint, but don't turn it into cheap flirting. 3. Respond with a light line, just enough to show you're not avoiding it. For example, "I like the way you talk. Fun, but layered." Or, "Careful now." With stories like that, someone's bound to fall into your trap. Why does this small thing matter? Because women don't share personal stories with just anyone. If she's telling you jokes about sex or sensitive scenarios while still staying graceful, she's sending out signals to see whether you're a safe person to open up to. A woman's humor is a key, not a trick. Don't think she's just flirting or trying to seduce you. Women don't use words to lure you into physical closeness. They use humor to invite you into a real conversation, where emotion, subtlety, and connection are being tested. Conclusion. If she jokes about sex, listen with finesse. Your reaction in those moments will determine whether you're someone who can go deeper into her world, or just a casual friend for small talk and nothing more. Because sometimes what makes a woman feel you're special isn't that you're good at talking, but that you know how to listen to what she's not quite ready to say aloud. Part 6. When she shares her imaginings, don't laugh, just stay. Have you ever heard a woman say, "I often imagine the two of us growing old together, living in a small house somewhere far from traffic noise"? Or, "I dream of an evening, no internet, no phones, just candles, wine and jazz music"? If you're the kind of man who responds with, "Sounds really romantic," then changes the subject, "I'm sorry, but you've just dropped one of the most powerful emotional bonding opportunities a woman could offer you." Women use imagination to open doors, not to escape. Many men hear the word imagine and think of fantasy, daydreams, or impracticality. But for women, imagination isn't about escaping. It's about testing who's sensitive enough to share their inner world. It's a silent test. Can you see their soul? Do you care about what moves them? Can you step into the world they've created without trying to fix it with logic? The story of Sarah in Denver. Sarah is a high school teacher in Denver, someone who loves peace, is introspective, and has a rich imagination. On one date, she told her boyfriend, "I always imagine a perfect evening being two people reading under warm yellow light, holding hands with soft music playing, and no need to speak, just feeling each other's presence." Her boyfriend, a young businessman, laughed out loud and said, "All I need is a Super Bowl night with my buddies, and I'm good." Sarah didn't say anything, But from that day on, she started feeling distant. Not because he liked the Super Bowl, but because he didn't try to understand that she was sharing the deepest part of herself. Imagination is the highest form of emotional communication. You see, when a woman shares her imaginings with you, she's unlocking a private space in her mind where not everyone is allowed, and sharing feelings, not plans, and waiting to see if you're truly listening. Measuring how safe she feels with you. If she feels mocked, ignored, or corrected, she'll never share again. The difference between hearing and feeling. Let's say your girlfriend says, "I imagine a trip with someone I love, no itinerary, just going, to see if we really click." Wrong response. No plan. That sounds like chaos. Who could deal with that? Right response. Sounds like a trip where we'd really learn a lot about each other. If that day comes, I'll pack lighter, so we can carry more memories. Just that is enough to make her feel understood. Imagination is a form of healing and connection. Women often imagine peaceful, intimate moments because they need a mental space to heal from a world of noise, pressure, and expectations. If you can wander through that imagined world with her without rushing to label it as naive or irrational, you've already made it halfway to her heart. A simple but spot-on response. When she shares an imagining, you don't need to become a poet or philosopher. Just 1. Listen fully without interrupting. 2. Respond sincerely, no sarcasm, no avoidance. 3. Show that you're imagining it with her. No promises needed. Just be present in that moment. Her imaginings may not include you, but if she tells you, it means something. She may not have envisioned a future with you in it yet, but when she shares it, that's an invitation. Step in and see. Maybe we're a fit. And if you decline or aren't sensitive enough to recognize that, you're not just turning down a story, but also turning down a chance for deeper emotional connection. Conclusion. Don't be the one to break the dream just because you don't understand. Not all men are dreamers, but refined men know how to respect the dreams of the woman they love. Because you don't need to understand every emotional layer she has. You just need not to destroy it with shallowness, logic, or mockery. Sometimes, in those very imaginings, she's quietly looking to see if there's someone calm enough, deep enough, to stay. Part 7. Do I look good in this? Don't answer like Google, answer like a lover. This isn't a question, it's a test, subtle and profound, and if you don't understand the context, you'll end up becoming a walking version of a search engine. And no one wants to date Google. It's not about the outfit, but about how you see her when she asks, "What do you think of me wearing this?" She's not looking for a technical breakdown like knee-length skirt, pastel tones, well-coordinated, good fit, weather appropriate. She's waiting for you to look at her, not just the dress. And if you miss the hope in her eyes, you'll miss a chance to affirm the trust she just opened up. It's fine. The root of 70% of women's wardrobe stress. Did you know the word fine is one of the most dangerous words in love? It lacks emotion. It shows no observation. It doesn't make the other person feel appreciated. Worse yet, fine makes women think, he didn't really look at me. And in love, not being seen often hurts more than being rejected. A story in New York. Green dress and cold eyes. I once had lunch at an Italian restaurant in New York. At the next table was a young couple. The woman, in an emerald green dress, hair in a bun, wine-red lipstick, had clearly put in effort. She gently turned and asked her boyfriend, "Do you think I look okay in this?" The guy, eyes glued to his phone, looked up for 1.5 seconds and said, "Oh, green dress, it's fine." I didn't hear the rest, but I saw the spark in her eyes die out for the rest of the meal. Women don't want advice. They want to be seen. Here's something strange. Women usually know whether they look good, and they can spend hours in front of a mirror adjusting every detail. But when they ask you, what they really want is to know whether you've been paying attention. It's not a test of fashion sense. It's a test of your sensitivity and how emotionally invested you still are in the relationship. How to respond in a way that makes her smile. And remember, you don't need to be a stylist, you just need to be sincere and a little creative. Instead of saying, "You look nice," try something like, "That dress really brings out your eyes." "I just saw a woman who made me forget I was hungry." That's you. If I were a fashion store, I'd put up a sold-out sign the moment you walked in. A little humor, a little surprise, a little imagery. She won't just feel beautiful, she'll feel seen. It's not about the clothes, but about how you show up. When a woman asks about her appearance, she's looking for eyes that don't just glance past, a heart that still cares, a memory sharp enough to see she doesn't look like yesterday. You don't always have to speak like a poet, but at least don't sound like a robot. How to read the signals behind her question. If she asks right before you go out, she's anxious about how you'll see her in public. If she asks at the end of the day, she may be tired and wants to know if her effort was noticed. If she asks while wearing something new, she's inviting you into a small moment of joy. Step in, don't stand outside. Conclusion. Do I look good? Isn't a test. It's a chance to connect. A well-timed compliment, even if not poetic, can be all she needs to feel loved once more. And if you get it right, she won't just remember what you said. She'll remember how you looked at her. Because in the end, for women, being recognized is not about information, it's about emotion. Part 8. When she touches you, it's not accidental, it's a signal. Touch is a language, and women, more than anyone, use that language artfully. A light touch on your hand while telling a story. A hug that lingers just a bit longer when saying goodbye. A gentle jab to your shoulder when you tell a lame joke. All of these may seem accidental, but they're never random. Touch is a biological signal, not an unconscious habit. Did you know? When a woman initiates touch, even in the slightest way, her body has made the decision before her mind has. Because touch is a conditioned act of safety. It only happens when she trusts you, she feels comfortable around you, or she wants to tell you something that words can't quite say. Women don't accidentally touch people they have no feelings for. Trust me. The story of Ethan in San Diego. Ethan is a fitness trainer living in San Diego. He told me about his girlfriend, a smart, funny, and incredibly intuitive woman. When we first met, she used to touch my shoulder when she laughed, or gently pat my arm when I told stories. At the time, I thought, maybe she's just a friendly person. But then came a period when Ethan was stressed from work and became less emotionally present. She stopped those gestures. No more shoulder touches, no more long hugs. Not out of anger, but because the connection had weakened, and he hadn't noticed. Ethan said, "I felt like something was missing, but I couldn't put my finger on it." Much later I realized touch wasn't a habit. It was an emotional indicator, and she had quietly withdrawn that intimacy. Common forms of light touch that carry heavy meaning. 1. Touching your hand while talking. She's seeking connection, a subtle invite to listen more closely. 2. Resting her head on your shoulder during a movie. Not because she's tired, but because she feels you're a safe place to lean on. 3. Walking beside you and occasionally brushing your arm. She's testing the waters of intimacy, closing the gap without saying a word. 4. Hugging you longer than usual when saying goodbye. If it lasts more than 3 seconds with a gentle squeeze, you're no longer in the friend zone. This isn't a tactic. It's the language of connection. Remember, women don't touch out of instinct. They touch because they want to. and usually only when they feel you're worthy of that closeness. Touch is how they express emotions that words might miscommunicate, and send the signal, "I feel safe near you." And sometimes say, "I miss you," without uttering a word. Don't unintentionally dismiss a deeply human moment. Common male missteps in response: getting startled and not responding at all. She may think you don't care. Reacting too much, joking inappropriately. She may pull the signal back, not recognizing it as a form of intimacy. You miss a chance to deepen the connection. The right response? Smile. Look her in the eyes. Gently return the touch, if it feels right. And most importantly, be present, so she feels your appreciation for that closeness. Why is touch so important? Because in a world growing more distant, full of social media, emojis and text messages, touch is the one thing AI can never replace. And to a woman, the man she wants to touch is the man who makes her feel most herself. Conclusion: when she touches you, don't think it's random. Touch is a choice, a way of saying, "I'm here and I see you." And if you're perceptive, you'll understand. A well-timed touch is worth more than 100 texts or fancy declarations. Because in the end, love isn't spoken in long speeches, it's felt in a short touch that lands right on the heart. Part 9. Women aren't silent. They're waiting for someone who knows how to listen without words. There's a strange truth. Percent of the most important things in a relationship are never spoken out loud. They hide in glances, in silences, in a light touch, in a fleeting suggestion. And women are masters at sending unspoken signals. Why don't they say it directly? Not because they don't know how, not because they lack courage, and certainly not because they want to make things hard for men, but because women understand something few are willing to admit. If I have to say everything I need, then this love is no longer a place where I can rest. Because true love isn't about being served like a checklist. True love is being understood without having to ask. The language of emotion. How women measure the safety of a relationship. Women don't love with a checklist. They don't fall in love based on your height, salary, or abs. They love because, do you make them feel safe? Do you understand them when they're tired? Are you quietly present when they no longer have the strength to say what they need? And to find out, women observe. They notice how you react when they lightly touch your hand, how you listen when they share a vague dream, how you look at them when they ask, "Do I look okay in this?" Every woman carries a unique kind of signal. You might call it emotional code or unspoken cues. But to women, it's how they test how deeply they can trust you. A woman once told me, "I don't need him to know everything. I just need him to notice when I'm no longer myself." And I thought, that's the deepest kind of love. Why are sensitive men the ones women love most? Not because they're richer, not because they're more handsome, but because they see what others don't. They might place a hand on her back when she's anxious. Hold her tightly without needing an explanation. Listen to a funny story and sense the loneliness behind it. Compliment a dress not just for its beauty, but because they understand she wants to feel seen. They don't measure love with logic, but with presence. To love isn't to understand everything, but to keep trying to read the hardest pages. You may never fully understand a woman, but you can choose to stay and keep reading even when today's page doesn't make sense. You might miss some signals, but as long as you're trying, she will know. And in love, the effort to understand is sometimes more important than understanding perfectly. Love isn't about giving the right answer. It's about responding at the right moment. Remember, when she's silent, don't walk away. When she asks a seemingly small question, pause and truly care. When she touches you, look deeply and be grateful. And when she shares her imagination, stay and listen with your heart. This isn't a skill, it's humanity. and it's the foundation of mature love. Closing thought. A woman will open her heart when you know how to listen with finesse. You don't need to be a perfect man, you just need to be the man who knows how to see and pauses to feel. Because in the end, a woman won't choose the one who listens best to her words, but the one who understands her the most when she says nothing at all. If you can do that, you don't just touch her hand, you touch her soul.